Kenneth, what is Kenneth
Okay,
saying?
so Kenneth is saying, hi guys, when flying in and out of Auckland, do you recommend starting on the North Island or maybe fly to the South Island right away and work our way back north? Or does it not make a difference? Well, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, should you start on the North Island or on the South Island for your road trip in New Zealand? First up, it will depend on how much time you have. If you do have a very limited amount of time, let's say 1 or 2 weeks, you may not want to spend an extra day in transit going from Auckland to Queenstown, like flying, taking another, shuttle and transport and all that. That may just be an extra hustle that you don't want. So that would be the first thing that I take in account. I would be thinking, okay, how much time do I have, and is it worth for me to kind of lose a day somewhere? If you can afford it, we definitely advise to actually kind of organize yourself into maybe starting on the South Island, even if you're landing in Auckland.
Yeah, so alternatively, so if you arrive in Auckland, you can take a flight. Usually a good place to take a flight to is Christchurch, or alternatively, you could be taking a flight to Queenstown. Depends on really where you want to visit and again, how much time you have. But the good thing about traveling from south to north is that most people travel from the north to south. So just sort of the traffic flow around the country, it's a little bit busier the roads are a little bit busier heading south. But if you want to experience things, a little bit alternatively, maybe with a few less cars on your side of the road, for instance, then going from south to north is usually a good way of going about it.
Plus, you can save money on relocation, don't you?
I was going to say, also, if you are renting a car or a camper van, usually the car rental rates can be a little bit cheaper if you are going from south to north, because a lot of car rental companies, because everyone's going from north to south, they end up with a huge influx of cars at their South Island depots, and they need to get them all up to the North Island. So usually you can find sort of relocation opportunities, which essentially means you get a really cheap rate on your car or camper van rental rate. And basically that allows you to travel up north for much cheaper than it would be if you were traveling from north to south.
Most relocation deal that you're going to be able to find, because a lot of people try to find relocation deals, and we have full articles about it on nzbucketguide.com. So if you go on nzbucketguide.com, you can type in the search bar relocation and you'll be able to learn everything about it. But most of them are to be found in suburbs, and that's very understandable. Almost every tourist arrive in Auckland. If you look for some flights to come into New Zealand, you will find that most flights are coming directly into Auckland. And considering that, keeping that in mind, almost every tourist is going to take its camper van or its car rental and start in Auckland and start making their way down south. Now, because you want to maximize your time around New Zealand, you don't necessarily want to make a loop and finish back in Auckland, which will involve taking twice the ferry and just going multiple times to same places, and it give you much less time to enjoy New Zealand. So a lot of people actually start in Auckland and drop off their car in Queenstown and then take a flight Queenstown Auckland and then fly back home. The flight Queenstown Aucklands are rather cheap. They're sometimes down to only $30, 29 New Zealand dollars. Depending on your date, maybe a little bit more than that, but that should tell you how low that can start. So keeping that in mind, a lot of tourists do that way. So if you take the other way around, you will have, as I said, emptier road, but you're also going to have cheaper rates if you rent your car, or you can even score relocation deals, which will be way cheaper. Now, the downside of relocation is that usually you have a shorter period of times to actually to
do the relocation.
To do the whole relocation, so they will give you 5 or 6 days. So that may not be that great, but just the sheer fact that you're going to save money on your car rental is already really good. So that would be the first train of thought that we'll have. The other train of thought, why we do like to travel south to north rather than north to south, is because your kind of day itinerary and the structures of your days are going to be different than what other people have. So because most people travel north to south, they start driving their way. For example, let's take the example of the east coast of the South Island, for example. Most people will travel that way.
That's the west coast.
West coast of the South Island, sorry. Most people will travel that way. Around this area here, again, is it around here that we have the glacier, or they're higher?
Higher, okay. The higher option.
All right, here you go. So this is where you have the glacier. Most people will drive and arrive in mid-afternoon around here where you have the glaciers, right? So this is where peak time is, right? However, if you actually travel the other way around, you could be here in, mid-morning to early afternoon, which means you're already baked in the crowd. And when it comes down to doing tours that goes around every two hours, you have much more chance to find availability. And also because you're here a little bit earlier, if your tour has been cancelled, you have more chance to be rebooked afterward rather than someone that arrives later. And this is the case in many different spots around New Zealand, because almost every tourism business is built around the fact that people are usually traveling the same way. So they always arrive for example, everybody always arrive in Rotorua around early evening. Everybody does that and then spend a day in Rotorua. If you travel the other way around and you arrive in Rotorua in the morning, do a couple of activities and then leave, you beat the crowd everywhere. And so you will have like Geothermal Park completely empty just to yourself. It's epic. You have videos of us literally traveling around New Zealand, and you see us in stunning, amazing locations just to have the location completely empty to ourselves. Same thing around here when you go and do some cruises around Akaura, for example, or even around Kaikoura. You can be there in the early one, or even the late evening. You can definitely have the opposite schedule of what people have, and that would be absolutely perfect. So that's another really good reason to travel New Zealand from south to north. And again, it really also depends on will you be able to cope with the flight, because you already fly for a lot and then you have to add an extra flight. But most of the formalities, even if you decide to start south, will be done in Auckland, wouldn't it, Laura?
Yes.
Okay, so when you arrive in New Zealand, you won't be extending your nonsense way too much. Everybody will do the same thing. You arrive in Auckland, you go through all the biosecurities, you go through all the customs, you go through all that, and then you just take a domestic flight. So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much extra flight and extra hustle and extra formalities and everything, but it's really not, because the formalities are exactly the same. Should you decide to actually hop off in Auckland rather than to hop off in Queenstown. So even if you flight Auckland to Queenstown, make you land in Queenstown a little bit late, let's say like 8 p.m. You won't have to go through all the customs and all the formalities. Again, at 8 p.m. when you get really exhausted and everything, at 8 p.m. you just hop in your shuttle and you get to your hotel and you're all sorted. So it's not really that much of a hassle. That's what I was getting into.
Okay, I didn't know where you were leading with that.
All right, another reason that you traveled south to north?
I actually have more reasons for traveling north to south.
All right, go for it. Let's debate.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it depends on what sort of activities or experiences you're looking for in New Zealand, but usually people come to New Zealand because they want to see amazing landscapes. The North Island has really amazing volcanoes and stuff like that, and beautiful rolling green hills and stuff like that, and it kind of is like, when you just in terms of, leading up to seeing epic stuff. If you're traveling from the north, you're seeing things that are kind of like, they're really cool. Like you see an epic volcano here and there, but it's just kind of like everything just seems to improve or look more epic the further south you go. So if you're looking to like sort of make your trip like a movie where, things go up to a climax and then, I just had this thought in my head right just now, but I was thinking if you want to lead up to seeing epic stuff more toward the end of your trip, if you're like, I just want things to get better and better and better, then maybe traveling from north to south is a way to go about it. That's not for any logistics or practical reasons whatsoever, but I had that thought in my head just now. Maybe if you want to just lead up to some epic stuff, you can do that. And now
you see why I'm usually the one organizing the trip. But no, that is true. It depends. If you want to go more for feeling and creating an epic feeling adventure, the crescendo that this will create by going from north to south, it's really kind of epic blockbuster, finishing with, kind of like the Queenstown area in an epic finally boss battle and then go nonsense. But if you do want to use logic and practicality when planning your trip and make it an overall easier experience, I personally believe that going from south to north would be the better.
And I do tend to
way.
agree, but I just had the thought,
Yeah.
like, if you were looking for reasons to travel north to south, if you were like, oh, I really want to travel north to south, but don't know why, then there's a reason for you.
And before we finish talking about this, the last thing that I want to point out is no matter which one you choose, doing a one-way trip around New Zealand, meaning starting in Auckland, finishing in Queenstown or Christchurch, you can make it, a little bit of a, a little bit kind of a loop and finishing in Christchurch, rather than finishing in Queenstown. But it's really up to you. But there is plenty of awesome things to see. But yeah, so making it a one-way, it's definitely a great idea when traveling in New Zealand, because that only makes it one ferry crossing right here.
Yeah.
The ferry crossing is expensive, extremely time-consuming, and just overall, it's you have to do it. They make it as easy as possible on you, the companies, right? But it's a hassle. It's really a hassle through your trip. So it will definitely make financial and just enjoyment sense to only do it one way.
Yeah.
So either north to south, north to south or south to north, but doing it only one way, definitely worth it. And the amount of money that you save on the ferry, especially with the camper van, is definitely worth the flight. 100%. So that would be our take on should you travel from north to south or south to north. There's kind of two schools of thought, but it looks like we're leaning more south to north, except if you want the crescendo epicness where you do north to south. And either or, it's a really good thing that you are considering only one-way trip in New Zealand. Kenneth, you are on the right track. All right, if you did find that useful, make sure to hit the like buttons, make sure to subscribe. We're here to help every single week. And if you have questions of your own, make sure to put them in the comments or in the live chat. We're here to help.